co-organizers of Axakers. I also work for Harken as an engagement manager. And I'm very happy to have a discussion and a chat, and we really want to open to everyone here with Katie Vanneck-Smith, who's a co-founder and publisher of, now I'm going to say, I'm a known native speaker.
Well, you got Katie rather than Katie, so it could be Tortoise or Tortoise. Which one do you want to go for?
Well, which one you would go for?
I don't mind.
I'm gonna Tortoise?
Very good.
Perfect. Which is a slow news startup. It doesn't do breaking news, but talks about what's driving the news. What does it mean?
So slow is only one of the things we do. So hi, everybody. Oh, hello. Thanks for the wave. That was really nice. Thanks. How are you? Oh, it's good to see you. Right. So Tortoise does three things. We do slow news, which is, as you say, the forces driving the news rather than breaking news. We think there are great breaking news sources out there, but we think the world probably doesn't need another one. But we're also open. And I think the other part of the sort of mission of Tortoise that we don't talk as much about, but actually is probably more differentiated about what we're there to do, is that we're open and we're built with and for our members. So if you think about the problems that we're trying to fix, as every startup says, we're here to solve. We see that there are two problems that we think Tortoise is part of the solution to, which is one that in many ways, news has become noise, and the worst thing that, in my opinion, and my co-founder James's opinion, could happen to our industry is that people turn off. And we think journalism really matters in a healthy democracy. So the idea of providing a alternative, an antidote to the sort of constant scroll and the news is noise, is a really powerful consumer proposition. And I'm a marketeer by training, so hence why I say the customer. And secondly, that we see that there's a widening power gap, and we think that people are looking for ways to get involved, to participate, to be part of the conversations, and to be part of actually having the conversations that will change things. So we think there are two consumer movements in parallel that we're sort of riding the wave of in a slow, thoughtful, tortoise-like way.
Which brings me, full disclosure, I'm a member, so
Thanks very much. Who else is a member? Show of hands. Oh, I love you, I love you, I love you, the rest of you, please join. We're really quite fun.
But I was looking at the website today, and there were a couple of things that really stood up to me. One was, you say we are committed to organized listening. What is the organized part, and how are the ways that you bring the audience into the conversation?
Okay, so we're a membership organization, and members get three things with their membership. So the first is our slow news feed, which is our daily edition. So we publish one, maybe two stories a day. They're 10 to 15 minutes in length. They're not breaking news. They're slower. They're more thoughtful. They have pre-reading and further reading. They're just longer reads. They're sort of a cross between The Atlantic and New Yorker in many ways. But the thing, and then we do a book once a quarter, because as all great journalistic enterprises, we still love print. Even though we are digital first, mobile first, we still do love a good book. So once a quarter, we publish a short book of long reads, sorry. And then the thing that's actually different in this organized listening that you talk about is our thinking. So many of us work in news organizations. We have our own editorial conferences. We know that our editorial conferences are where the bigwigs get together, they close the door, they have a chat, they come up with their point of view, we publish our opinion on our opinion pages, and we think that's brilliant, but we think there's a new model for it. And the model that we've built is sort of, if you like, a mashup of the leader pages and the letters pages. So what we do is every day we host think-ins, which is our model of organized listening, and that is a live journalism, if you like. It's an open news conference every day in our newsroom, and then at least once, maybe twice a week on the road, we go out and we host a conversation or a civilized disagreement, whichever one it ends up being, and it is hosted by one of our editors. We invite in 2 to 3 to 4 expert voices who've got deep domain knowledge on the subject we're talking about, and then our members are in the room. So I left a think-in tonight, which was on can we invent our way out of the climate crisis, which I thought no one would come to because it's 35 degrees outside, but turns out actually that's probably quite a good reason to try and invent your way out of the climate crisis. And we had that conversation in the round, and for us as journalists and a journalistic organization, it gives us a way of listening to voices that we wouldn't necessarily have in our newsrooms. So it takes us out of our own newsroom. It takes us also out of London, because we do them on the road at least once, as I said, if not twice a week. And the whole idea of a Think-Id is that it is an organised system of listening. So we're there to learn.
I want to go back later to the dialogue and conflictual or not too much part of it. But again, the other aspect which is on the membership model. So we go to journalist conferences, and now you hear all the time talking about reader revenue. And there is the most straightforward subscription kind of model, where is a really transactional relationship. I give you money to access a product or a service, and the membership model in which you're building a relationship with the audience. Is there anything that you've observed in the time you've been doing the think-ins from your membership that you weren't expecting? Is there a type of member rather than the other who's coming up? Or is there anything surprising by, what does it change when you bring the audience in and the members have a say? What happens?
Oh, there's a lot of things in that. Okay, so subscription and membership are fundamentally different. I mean, it's semantics. We come from journalism businesses. We often forget that words matter, and there is a big difference between being a subscriber and a member of something. And if you ask someone to join something rather than to buy it, you move beyond the transactional to the relational. And, that is what you see in a think-in. So the rooms that we have think-ins in are different, because I've spent 25 years previously at News Corp. I did the Times paywall with James Harding, hence why we're now doing this, and then I went to the Wall Street Journal. So I'm familiar with traditional paid-for subscription businesses and the types of audiences that we've attracted to those brands over the years as we've been learning and experimenting and trying to change our model. And a think-in room and our members are different in a few ways. First, our members are predominantly under 30, actually. Well, not predominantly, they're 42% under 30. So our rooms are younger than most of the rooms that I've sat in my previous Times and Wall Street Journal days. They're more diverse, actually, ethnically and actually politically, because we're apolitical. We're not on either side, on one of the other sides of the debate, although there's now multiple sides to multiple debates. So actually we do have as many Brexiteers as we have Remainers, which was a surprise. Actually, I thought we'd all be liberal elite Remainers, and actually we're not. We do have Brexiteers in our rooms, which is actually a relief, because the whole idea of a think-in is that you do bring together people with different points of views, and that is what makes the conversation good. So if we were to build a membership that was reflective of the echo chamber of London and our own journalistic sort of desires, that wouldn't necessarily be an organised system of listening. We might as well just close the door again and talk amongst ourselves. So that's been I think the age and the youth and the fact that people will pay for things they value, and it's great for all of us, that there is this new audience prepared to pay. That's probably been the biggest surprise, and the fact that we were Brexiteers and Remainers, because I didn't think that would be the case.
And it's exactly what I was going to ask you next.
Okay.
So in the sense that the membership goes around a value proposition in which I, as a member, recognize myself. And in a world which is much more polarized and in which having a dialogue is different and is difficult, having those kind of two sides was kind of a surprise for you. But does it make building a membership value proposition more difficult, in the sense of, can you build a membership proposition around I am the place for dialogue rather than I represent these values or those values? Have you found this as a difficult part, or not really?
Well, in today's world, it's really easy to say what you're against. It's much, much harder to say what you're for. And so most brands are now polarizing around what they're against rather than what they're for. And I think at Tortoise, we're setting out to try and stand for some things, right? Things that we believe in. And those are more inclusive. They're more human. They're more sort of actually, I describe a think-in as a cross between a seminar and a dinner party. And it has that sort of it has a host, one of our editors, so James or Merope or Chris or Matt or Giles or Polly or Liz, who's with us on the front row here, and one of our editors will host it. And so the hosting's really important, because the hosting means that it's really courteous, it's really polite, and even if it's a difficult conversation, and we have difficult conversations, we're not always going to agree, it doesn't feel charged. And so actually, the best thing about a think-in is you come away with that sort of sense that I might understand the different person's perspective. I still don't agree necessarily, but understanding is going to be a really important part of, I think, rebuilding what is a polarized Britain, and I think is a really important part for us from a societal point of view, because unless we provide these platforms and environments to do that, it's really hard. But to your point about will we only attract the same type of people? I mean, I thought we were in danger of having, predominantly the liberal elite in our rooms, and that's not what we set out to do. And so we set out to sort of build it slightly differently. And I think in order to really be diverse, you have to bend yourself. You can't just accept who you are and what that industry is. And so paid for journalism is, in predominant terms, a certain type of customer who's prepared to pay for digital journalism, right? Actually, we had a much more diverse printed readership than we have now in paid for digital. And so how do you address that? That's the big question. And so, I mean, we're only 3 months old, but we've got 11,500 members now, and a point where we had 7,500, we sat there and looked across the membership base, and we're like patting ourselves on the back, 42% under 30, 13% BAME, it's amazing, we're doing a good job, we could do better. But actually, the main thing that was not working was the fact that whilst we were different, we were still professional classes. We didn't have socioeconomic diversity in the base in a way that really, truly matters if you want to have a different type of conversation. And so in every great startup where you have no legacy and you just think, oh, how do we fix that? You find a solution, and that's why we launched the network. So 2 weeks ago, we launched it. We had the idea 8 weeks ago, the joy of a startup. And we went out and we got brands, businesses, patrons who care about journalism to fund memberships on behalf of others. And so we've now got 8,000 funded memberships. We haven't donated all of them yet. We've only donated 3,000 of those as part of our 11,500. And we're working with brands and community and charities and businesses who are working in those communities to make sure that our membership then also reaches out into parts of Britain and into communities that are at the front lines and sometimes are underrepresented in our journalism. So, you have to think up all these new ways to make sure that you don't end up in a sort of another ecosystem or echo chamber, if you like.
I want to open up to the audience, but I have one last question, which is more about your career. So I also like that on the website you say you want to build a reliable and sustainable business model, which is something that we saw in... that we saw in media not being so common. And you've been holding positions, very senior position in different companies on the business side. So we have a room of mainly journalists and technologists. What does a publisher do?
Well, I don't really know, but everyone, before being a publisher, people always said, oh, you're a marketeer. And I never really thought of myself as a marketeer either. I mean, I'm just a businesswoman who loves this bloody industry, right? I think it really matters that we find a way to fund the future of journalism. And so I fell into it in the 90s, and I've been doing it ever since. But there was something Casper just showed on his slide before when he said, oh, here was the business and it was doing okay, and then we brought in a digital marketeer. And for me, that's a really important part of the narrative of this industry, right? Which is you've got a room here of technologists and, hacks and hackers, technologists and journalists. You need the marketeers as well. Marketing and technology and journalism together is, I think, the way that you're going to change things. Because what's changed is consumer behavior, consumer expectation, consumer needs. The needs of your customer is the thing that is actually going to be the difference between success and failure. So I used to always say, as a marketeer who walked I had that lovely job, right, in a news brand for many years, where I wasn't purely commercial, because the ad people slightly hated the marketeers, and the journalists, you earned your stripe to be in a room with them. So we were sort of like, it was always our fault if it never went right, and it was never our idea if it went, it was just like nothing ever went in the way of the marketeers. But I think I've observed in our industry that, marketing, we like to call it other things because we don't like to just invite the marketeers in. So we'll call it audience development, or we'll call it social media, or we'll call it all these other things. It is marketing. It is just about connecting what you do with your customers. And so I think I'd add your marketeers into this great forum, because unless you really understand the customer, then you're not really going to be able to change your models to be able to adapt quick enough. And so that is what I would say is, for me, the biggest joy of the last 25 years, is that, I was lucky enough to be able to be accepted by the journalists, and I sort of, lived the world of art and science. Everyone thought I was going to make the Times, take the Times out of business when we put the paywall in. Everyone was waiting for it to fail. And then when it was a success and made the Times profitable for the first time in its 240 years of history, actually then suddenly everyone had, a sort of part in that story, which is great, because that's what success is. Everyone's doing it. But get your marketeers in as well, because great marketeers are married to finance, so they know how to, they're friends actually with finance. They know how to unlock the money, and they're married to technology, and they partner with their editorial and journalistic colleagues. So I'd have your marketeers in here. That's what a publisher, that's me. I'm not a publisher, I'm a marketeer, sort of trying to do something different.
Thank you very much. Do we have questions from the audience? Jasper.
Of course. Hello, Jasper, shout.
Wait. He had the mic first. Then you again.
Oh.
Hello. How slow is slow from thinking to 15-minute read? How long does it take? And the second cheeky question, what other ideas have you got coming up to grow?
So really a difficult question to ask, actually, because a thinking can be, you can have an idea for a story, commission a thinking then can give you a to-do list, and then it can go into something else. But to give you I'll give you a couple of examples. We held a think-in way back last year before we were even on Kickstarter, but just to kind of test the idea of a think-in. And we were very kindly hosted by Soho House, and we had a think-in on the future of men, and we had it in New York. And we had a great think-in, and at the end of it, one of our expert voices that had been invited in was a guy called Michael Collins, who's an assemblyman in the Bronx. And he said, we're actually talking about the future of white men here. If you really want to talk about the future of men, you need to get up to the Bronx. So we went to the Bronx and we had a conversation about the future of men, and it was fascinating, and it went somewhere completely different. And we thought, and it was a really difficult room. It was a really sort of hard room, and we thought someone was talking about the knock on the door. And we all assumed that they were talking about the police. And the guy goes, no, I'm not worried about the police knocking on my door. I'm worried about family services knocking on my door and taking away my children. And we were like, okay. And so that then triggered a sort of a look into family separation in the UK, looking at the government's role in it. And then a great journalist of ours, Polly Curtis, who's one of our editors and partners as of next week, as she's left the Oxford Reuters Institute. She then started looking into this with us. And we found the data that shows that 1 in 5 children in the UK is known and has been visited, if they're under age of 5, by a social worker. It's 47% in Blackpool. And so then you ask yourself the set of questions, why? Is that, how much of that's media highlighting Baby P and Victoria Climby? How much of that is governments not trusting? Where does that go? So we opened a case file on family separation. So it's a very long answer, because that think-in happened in May last year. We opened the case file in March of this year. After we'd done a bunch of research, we've now had 5 think-ins up and down the country, from Sunderland to Southend, 2 in London and 1 in Oxford. We have a members panel who are born out of our member base, who work in that, and the case file is still open. So it can be a long process. Equally, we can sit in a commissioning meeting, and the kind of fastest turnaround would be probably from an idea to publication 1 week. I mean, of course we can do it in a day, because they're all bloody ex-journalists who've worked on everything else, but it would be normally a week. And the second one, what other ideas have I got up my sleeve to grow or to do different? What's the point that you're making, Will? I can't tell you that. The network is really, for me, a turning point in thinking. You know, we started by thinking differently about pricing, because actually we all price our products, or we price our subscriptions and our membership on our product pricing. So we go, here is the product that we've had for years. This was the product's price. Now we're going to do it here, and therefore we're going to discount it by X. Or worse, we take the digital ecosystem of subscriptions pricing of $9.99 and we charge that. Both of those are product pricing strategies. We have a consumer pricing strategy, which is we're membership. Therefore, we say if you're under 30 or over 70, you have this price. Here's another price. If you're this type of person, there's this price. And so that was the first thing that helped us be different and actually grow a different type of member. The network is addressing the socioeconomic difference. As I work out what are the differences with the team at Tortoise that we have, that will drive the next innovation around how do we grow. So I don't know yet, because I don't know what the problem is we're trying to fix.
A question over here.
I'm sorry, this is what you get if you invite a former media journalist into the room. This will probably be relevant to what you've just been saying about pricing, but you talk about a sustainable business model. How many people do you need to be members to actually hit what you consider to sustain the kind of journalism that you want to do and the kind of publication and operation and meetups? What's the numbers?
So I love that, because that would be like assuming that we'd always be happy if we got sustainable here. The worst bit about that is as soon as I hit that number, it's like, okay, let's go to the US, and then it's not sustainable, and then we have to do it again. But I mean, for the UK model, it is, we're looking at around 70 to 80,000 members that you could build a really, really meaningful, sustainable, profitable business on. We're at 11,500 now, after 3 months.
I just wanted to ask about...
Hi, what's your name?
Hi, I'm
Sorry.
Joe.
Hi, Joe.
Hi,
I know everyone else. I know the other guys.
The story about social services sounds like it packed a real punch, and I just wondered about how you build in impact into your model, and off the back of that sort of syndication, spreading stories around wider people while still being a paywall service, etc.
So we're not a paywall, we're a membership business.
Sorry, yes.
And therefore that means as a member, which you're not, but you must become, but as a member, you can share our journalism with anyone you want. Every great membership organization is built to be shared. Think about your gym, think about Soho House, think about National Trust, think about anything you're a member of. It's built so that you share it with the people, your friends and family, and the people you care about. So if you share any article from Tortoise, it is a share. So there is no paywall, because that's journalistic, content-driven, subscription-based like business model, and we're not that. We're slightly different. But it's, you can share it widely. Join. Or just follow Chris Cook. He's an avid tweeter, and you can probably get into everything if you just want to read our journalism.
Cool.
Oh, there's a gentleman there.
One last.
And I like him because he's looking very dapper. So you get to ask me a question.
I wanted to ask, so you said you didn't want to do breaking news because loads of other people doing breaking news, but it strikes me there's loads of other people doing long form and have been doing it for a long time. So curious to see what you would say is distinctive about Tortoise from that perspective. And also when you talk about the network, that had a kind of slight whiff of kind of bulk sales about it and sponsored sales, and how would you respond to that?
Love the cynicism of journalism. This is why we're in the shit show we're in. So, half of the issue of our industry is our journalists talk down what we do all the time instead of talking it up. And you're a classic example, dapper as you may be. Two parts to that. The first around bulk sales. Absolutely not bulk sales. So we went out and have designed it in a way. So my background is newspaper promotions. I know how to get people to do shit, right? That's what I grew up on, right? So I knew how to get 260,000 people to redeem a free Eurostar ticket for every reader, right? You build the mechanics that get the action and engagement you need. So with the network, the bulk sales would have been, I just got people to buy it, and then I would have just put it out there and said, redeem it. But actually, in designing the network, we've gone out and said, right, let's find those connecting partners who've got programs where what we're doing really matters to them. So I'll give you one example. Inter University, right? They're an amazing charity. They've got 30 centres up and down the country. They take kids on free school meals from the worst estates in Britain, and they take them from the age of 7 to the age of 18 to get them into university, right? 17% chance of going to university if you're on a free school meal. You go on an inter-university, you're part of their centre, 75%. They have programs that they've designed. They know that world so much better than I'm ever going to know it, right? I mean, here's the sort of teaching the old dog new tricks, which is in my old job, we used to try and do everything ourselves. When we were at the Times or the Wall Street Journal, we thought we knew best. We don't know best. Inter-university know best. So I go to inter-university, we say, what's the program that you've got for these kids? What are the things that make a difference in their lives? And it's their apprenticeship programs that they do in their summer term before A-level, yada, yada, yada. We become part of that program. So when they come to go into their job, part of their induction for coming in, taking their job is, you know, a Tortoise Thinking, they get their Tortoise membership. We had an 89% activation of those memberships. That is higher than what you would find a normal paid-for member of any news brand using that brand in a 30-day period would be. So I dispute that fact because you design it to get the outcome you want, and I don't need to hit a number. I need to change the conversation. So that is the outcome I want, and I need the rooms to be different. I don't have an ABC number to hit. That's not my goal. What was your first question? Oh, so look, when we set out, we said we were the love child of The Economist and TED, right? You know, we were trying to take the sort of long-form journalism that we admire and we has seen as had a growth, right? There's been really good growth in long-form journalism. And The Guardian's long read is amazing, and their podcast of it is exceptional. But, you know, it's part of what people do. And I think it's the focus and the singularity of just long-form, slow journalism and investigative journalism rather than the breadth of what we've done in our previous jobs that is the difference. We're not the only people doing live journalism. We're not the only people producing books, and we're not the only people producing long-form content. But it's the intention and the focus and then the promise to the member, right, going back to the consumer, that is the difference.